the quadratic equation. And remember, the quadratic equation is x equals negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. And the quadratic equation is an analytical solution to a quadratic which has the general form of ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0. So when we solve that equation, we are getting the zeros, or where the parabola defined by the quadratic equation crosses the x-axis, okay? So let's go ahead and get started in deriving the quadratic equation from this general quadratic. The first thing we're going to do, we're going to take a strategy of completing the square, okay? So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to factor out an a from this term and this term. The way we do that is we do a times x squared plus b over a x plus c, okay, is equal to 0, okay? Now, what we're going to do is we're going to look at what does it look like when you complete the square. So we want to put in something here. We want to put in something here. We want to add something there, a term, that allows us to make this whole thing a perfect square, okay? So let's go look at what form a perfect square looks like. So let's take something that looks like this, and if you distribute this out, what you get is x squared plus 2m plus m squared, okay? So if we want to put this in the same form as this, okay, what we need to do is set m equal to b over a. Actually, 2m equals b over a. What that means is that m is equal to b over 2a, okay? And m squared, which is what we need to put in here in this position, is going to be equal to b squared over 4a squared. So let's go ahead and put that in this spot right here, okay? And this makes this a perfect square, which means that we can take the square root of it, okay? So b squared over 4a squared is what we're putting in there. Now, we can't just put in something on one side of the equation and not have and still expect it to balance unless we put in the same term on the other side of the equation. So the term that we put in, you might initially think it's b squared over 4a squared, but no, because we have this a out here, it's actually b squared over 4a. So we're going to put that on the other side of the equation. Okay? And now, this is just merely a exercise in basic algebra. So now we have a times x, and remember the form here is the m, and we calculated m to be b over 2a. b over 2a squared. And if you do a little bit of algebra, you'll see that this is equal to that, okay? So now we're going to go ahead and keep cranking the algebra here, and hopefully we will end up with this solution. So now, subtract c from both sides. Let's go ahead and do that. So we have ax plus b over 2a squared. And we're subtracting c from this side and the other side. So now we have b squared over 4a minus c, okay? And now we're going to go ahead and divide by a on both sides. okay? So now we're gonna have x plus b over 2a squared, okay? And we're dividing by a on both sides, so now we have equals b squared over 4a squared minus c over a, okay? Now, this is the tricky part now. So now we're going to go ahead and take the square root of both sides. So now we have x plus b over 2a is the square root of this side, okay? And we're going to have that equal to the square root of b squared over 4a squared minus c over a, okay? And now we are going to go ahead and subtract b over 2a, and this square root, as you probably recognize, is a plus or minus. There's a positive root and a negative root, okay? So now we're going to subtract b over 2a from both sides. So now we are left with x equals b over 2a, and that's a minus on the other side, okay? Plus or minus the square root of b squared over 4a squared minus c over a. And at this point, this becomes a exercise in showing that this is of the same form as this, okay? And one way we could do that is that we can combine, make the denominator here the same for this as it is over here. So we can multiply top and bottom by 4a over 4a, okay? So what we get when we do that is we get x equals negative b over 2a plus or minus the square root of b squared, okay, minus 4ac over 4a squared, okay? And we know that the square root of 4a